All right, it says we're live. Hey, Jeff. Welcome to today's CEO Zones live stream with Jeff Chatterton, the CEO of Checkmate Public Affairs. Uh, that'd be a whole different deal, wouldn't it? Maybe you got
I've heard all the different various
yeah,
permutations.
maybe you actually got a promotion and didn't know it. There you go. Public affairs. Today, we're going to talk about three specific topics: the five, or maybe even more, message traps that instantly destroy trust and how to avoid them; the simple effect of alternatives that calm fears and restore credibility; how to stop torpedoing your own reputation even in peacetime. And Jeff, it's just a real pleasure for me to have you here. I really, really appreciate you. This will be your second live stream with us. We encourage the audience, the live audience, to please ask questions. You can type them in the chat. You can give insights. It's my pleasure as the host and CEO of CEO Zones to try to throw our guests off and make our content partners add value, because that's what we're about inside the community. So with that, Jeff, welcome, Jeff.
Hey, it's always good to be here. You're doing a fantastic job, Bill, at really genuinely trying to be be a resource to your community, and that's encouraging to see. Um, and thanks for having me.
Okay, you're welcome. Now add some value, man.
Yeah, do it now. Yes. Uh, so yeah, I'm going to pick this one up from where we talked last month, and we talked about crisis communications and some of the from the 30,000 foot level. Today, I'm just going to delve a little bit into some of the nooks and the crannies and the hidden corners that where I find a lot of business leaders tend to wander off into the weeds. I'm going to walk through some examples, and you'll see how easy it is to do, but also why you don't want to do it. And so you can go example after example after example. Um, and everyone has that crisis example, and I'm not talking about like the actions that got them into trouble. I don't even have a deck prepared on this one, but everyone remembers the BP oil spill, Louisiana Gulf. The fact was, Tony Hayward, CEO of British Petroleum, the crisis ostensibly was the fact that you have a broken pipeline or a broken wellhead that was releasing millions of barrels of oil into the Louisiana Gulf. That's fair. Tony Hayward got himself into trouble, not necessarily because because of all the oil leaking into the Gulf. I have the clip. At one point, everyone's complaining, and they have protests, and they have and all of these people who are picketing outside BP's headquarters, and the reporter asked him, what does this mean for you? And he goes, I'd like my life back. And that's what did it. It shows an incredible lack of empathy. It shows an incredible lack of understanding of the ability to look at this through the lens of the people that he was directly affecting. As a result, and I wish I could make this up because truth is really better than fiction, Tony Hayward wasn't fired. The public relations implications of actually firing Tony Hayward probably weren't worth it. But you know where Tony Hayward did end up?
I don't know.
Siberia. Literally, Siberia. He was exiled to Siberia. He was reassigned in charge of the BP oil exploration initiatives back when Russia was a world player and is actually worth doing business with. Right. I don't know where he is now, but it's proof that you can get yourself into trouble. It's not that the bad thing has happened. It's how you respond to the bad thing. And ultimately, that's what torpedoes you, or that's what proves that you can be trusted and credible.
Right.
And that's what I want to talk about. Just the different responses and the different things that people do that get themselves in trouble. So how do I bring up my deck? What there we go. I just say, boom, bring up the deck.
I think we know who she is. Yep, there you go.
So the first thing I mentioned last time we chatted, it's not about the fact that you have a crisis. It's not about the oil leaking into the Gulf. It's how you respond. It's what the emotional reaction from your audience is going to be. The who, the what, the when, and the where. Those issues are fine. It's the how and the why. Those are the types of niggling, scary type questions that no one likes to answer. But that's really what crisis communications is all about. We talked about the power and the importance of the emotions that go into whether or not someone is going to trust you. And we reviewed this. This is Dr. Vince Cavella's work from Columbia University. And it is the 4 emotional factors that go into whether or not someone trusts you. And the big one on the left, the big, 50% of the pie, is empathy. A lot of people have misconstrued ideas about empathy. They think empathy is weakness, or they think empathy is the same thing as sympathy, or they think empathy is inherently a feminine trait. It's not about that. I have spent 20 years working with business leaders, working with CEOs, working with predominantly male CEOs, frankly, because I think female CEOs do better at this. But understanding empathy is not, it's not agreeing with people. It's not getting them to agree with you. It's simply acknowledging and understanding their perspective. It is making sure that they know that you know how they feel. If they can communicate how they feel, you've done half of your job. And it really is the crisis communication superpower that's out there. And if without empathy, you're dead in the water. So with that in mind, I wanted to talk about all of the different ways that organizations and organizational leaders really shoot themselves in the foot. Right? I typically do this part of a session either right before lunch, because some of it can be lighthearted, but there's some good information here. And the number, and I'm going to walk through some of the different things that you're going to find. So the number one, and by far and away the winner on what is the most common way a business leader is going to get themselves in trouble regarding an allegation, regarding misconduct, regarding an oil spill, regarding bad earnings report. It doesn't matter what the issue is. What are they going to get into trouble for? Denying a negative with a negative. And there's a number of reasons for that. Bill, what's the most famous political quote you can think of?
Political quote.
Go back in your brain throughout your history. What are the political quotes? And I'll
I am a Republican. I don't know.
Yeah. Remind you, what do you think about when you remember Bill Clinton?
Oh, it depends on the definition of what it is.
Yeah, or dare say, I did not have sex with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
Sure. Thank you for
Right.
leading the witness, because I was going all the way
Yeah.
back to Abe Lincoln. Yeah.
Let
Okay.
me give you another one. What do you think about when you think about Richard Nixon?
Uh,
I am not a crook.
I am not a crook. Yeah.
Right.
Or I guess in the vein of George Bush, I will not raise your taxes.
Yeah. Read my lips.
Yeah.
Both I am not a crook and I did not have sex with that woman, Miss Lewinsky, had suffer the same communications fatal flaw. He denied a negative with a negative, and it does not work. The problem from a communications perspective, the problem is actually really simple. The problem is people don't hear the word not or don't or can't. They don't hear that. All you're doing is repeating the original allegation back. We're busy people. We're running around dealing with, what's happening with my Amazon deliveries, and did I remember to pick up my wife's lunch? And oh geez, I can't remember, but isn't Jimmy's dentist appointment later this week? And what did the president just say something about sex with a woman? And boom, 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 boom. You're right. We're never gonna get our audience's attention. The other fatal flaw with denying a negative with a negative is that they're 7 times more memorable than positives. All you're doing is staking your claim in the area you don't want to be in, right? And it's hardwired. We're all human. We do these sorts of things whether we want to or not, quite frankly. If I were to say to you, everyone knows that Bill Foster is a convicted embezzler. You're going to do 2 things. You're going to say, first off, you're going to punch me in the nose. Secondly, you're going to say, I'm not an embezzler. What on earth are you talking about? Or whatever the issue is. And all people are doing is hearing you say embezzler, convicted sex offender, whatever.
Hey, now, slow down now.
Yeah, see. When we get allegations dumped in our lap, it's visceral. It hurts. You instantly, the hair on the back of your neck goes up. Your claws come out. You puff up your chest and you want to hit back. You want to pound folks with the truth. And I'm here to tell you, you cannot deny a negative with a negative, and it is incredibly difficult not to. Both times, if President Clinton, if President Nixon had answered the allegation with, I'm an honest man, I have conducted the office of the presidency with integrity and honor, it's a boring answer. But you know what? Sometimes boring is really good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes boring is kind of what you want. I've seen it time and time again. We're not experiencing bad test results. Bad idea. The land use planning hasn't been corrupted. You go on and on and on. That's the last thing you want to do. You want to tell people what you are. You don't tell them what you are not. So that's the first one. We get into the power of empathy. I talked a lot about, the worst empathy statement in the world, is I know how you feel. Right? Everyone hates that. Why do you hate that? Well, because you don't really know how they feel, and all you're trying to do is one up the person. I tell people what you don't want to do is acknowledge the bad thing. I share your concern about the bad test results. You have a right to be concerned about the chemicals in your groundwater. I'm concerned about the convicted sex offenders running up and down your street too. All of those sorts of things. No, I can see what you're trying to do. You're trying to establish empathy. You're trying to understand where the audience is. You're trying to prove that you're listening to them. But remember, it's not about facts. It's never about facts. And so that's why we have the green side of the equation. What we're trying to do is acknowledge the emotions. We're acknowledging the emotional realities. My personal favorite, the one I use all the time, I've asked myself that very same question. I've looked into that, Bill, because I recognize that this is an important subject to you. You've raised an issue which means a lot to me as well. Here's what I can tell you. Boom. And you're off and running, right? So number two, in terms of things that are that you think are the right things to do that you can't get away with doing, bad empathy statements. Don't acknowledge the bad thing that's going on outside your factory. Acknowledge the emotional reality that your audience is actually facing. Number three, I call them hedges, guarantees. Everyone likes guarantees. Can you guarantee me that my children are safe? Can you guarantee me that no one's going to get cancer from drinking the water? Can you guarantee me that, whatever? The problem is lawyers and engineers and scientists and everyone else don't like guarantees, for pretty obvious reasons. The other one that's gross and ugly are what I call hedges. True story. I was working with municipal politician, and the concern and the big, ugly, complicated story. The allegation was that they had rigged the land use planning board in a way that was going to be personally advantageous. So, one of the politicians owned a lot of land, and they were going to have it rezoned in a way that would make it worth so much more money. The local newspaper starts to investigate, and what got me hired, frankly, was that statement in red, which appeared in the Toronto Star, which says, "To the best of my knowledge, we're acting in a way that's honorable." Well, what's the problem with that statement, Bill?
What do you know and what don't you know?
Well, you could drive a truck through that.
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge, we're acting in a way that's honorable. No. You can't do that, right? So we changed the messaging, we changed our news releases, all of our frequently asked questions about it too. We do business honorably. You know what? And not only do we do business honorably, we're bringing on separate legal counsel to make sure we continue to do business honorably. It says the same thing. It's so much more effective. Now I get asked all the time, okay, so what do I do when the parents come to me and they say, can you guarantee me that my kid won't get hurt at your amusement park? Or can you guarantee me that we're not going to get, sick from drinking the municipal groundwater supply, or whatever the issue is? And frankly, the world is full of vagaries. We don't know. We really don't know. Like, is there proof that even using, this webcasting software won't eventually cause some sort of brain damage? No, we don't know that. We can reasonably make assumptions, right? But that's really bad messaging. Right. So what do we do with that? So I am a big fan of repeating the word back to them. What people often just need to hear is the word back. So I'm a big fan of, you know what, Bill, I can guarantee you that we're doing everything possible to make sure that that doesn't happen. Boom. You're off and running. You've established empathy. You've become a trusted ally, and you're off and running. Number 4, jokes. Don't. Any questions? Yeah. I have seen it where it's a nervous response. Sometimes self-deprecating humor, sometimes nerves, giggling, anything that people get nervous and they start to crack jokes because it's a self-soothing behavior, especially if they're about to go and talk to a very high staked out, high stressed audience. The problem with humor is that it is very easily misconstrued. Very, and people don't understand when you're laughing at yourself versus when you're laughing at them. Um, I, I was, we had a case where there was a municipal groundwater supply issue, and we had a massive community in the American Southwest that was getting together to talk about what does this trichloroethylene plume and the groundwater supply mean to them and their families. And so we had experts, and we had real estate lawyers, and we had toxicologists, and we had all of these different people around the room that you could go and talk to one-on-one. And I would go to all of the different stations before we opened the doors, because we had sessions at like 10 to noon, and then 2 to 4, and then 7 to 9. I said, get your jokes out of the way now. If you want to crack about, who was, not, playing the best in last night's hockey game, whatever the issue is, get that out of the system, because we cannot afford to be even seen to be giggling back and forth behind the scenes. This is a serious issue for this community. We're here to offer honest, empathetic, caring approaches. Humor just does not work. It's easy to think, oh, I'm just going to dial down the temperature. If I tell some jokes, people will laugh. It'll crack the tension. You can see how people think it's a good idea, and it's not. It just isn't. We don't. There are always exceptions to the rule. I'm just going to tell you, it's probably not worth trying to find that exception. And then one of my favorites, and I run into this one fairly often. Sometimes it's completely okay to ignore your audience. Doesn't matter what the issue is. So I'm gonna, maybe we're building a new megalithic skyscraper. We're gonna fill it full of the world's worst criminals, and the entire audience and the community is all upset about it. Okay, so it's a pretty classic not in my backyard issue, right? So you take any sort of divisive issue within the community, and you're gonna find 5 groups of people. Right. And I'll start from the bottom and I'll work my way back up. So at the very bottom, you got the supporters. Those are people who love you. They adore you. They can't wait to have mega jail. They think about all the jobs, all the economic boost, all of the thing. They think doesn't matter what you say, they're with you. Right. It's about, you can see this tiny little sliver of purple there in the pie chart. It's about 1% of your audience. Then you've got sympathizers. They like you. They're with you. They're with you probably 2/3, 75% of the time. They like you a lot. They think it's a great idea. They can't wait to see the economic. They have some concerns. They do. And they're not afraid to call you out publicly if you say something dumb. But for the most part, they're okay. Then you got straddlers. Straddlers are the big, giant, mushy middle. It's that Pac-Man looking orange slice of the pie. It's people who would drive right by mega jail, not know that it's a jail. They don't know. They don't care. They have kids' soccer practice to deal with. They have grandma going into a nursing home. They have job cuts and 75 other things going on. And frankly, this is not their problem, right? So then on the other half of that pie, you've got skeptics. Skeptics are a lot like sympathizers, but they're the opposite. They don't like you 75% of the time. Doesn't matter what you say, they're probably going to complain about it. They're loud, they're mouthy, they're public, they're bitchy, they're cranky. They really don't want much to do with you, and they think you're a jerk. But then you've got splenetics. Splenetics I think I made up the word just because I needed a fifth
Okay.
S. They're people who will cut their own spleen out if it means that they can offend you with it. It does not matter what you say. It does not matter what you do. You could come out and offer $1 million in cash to every person in that county. They will say, well, why isn't it two? It does not matter. So the problem is so this is the same data broken down in a different visual form. I have had multiple audience members point out that looks like a giant middle finger. That was not intentional, but you can understand the point, right? The problem that we have is when you look at it, the data like this, who do you tend to want to address, right? Who do you want to talk to? So your vanilla communications department, your marketing team, your public relations team, they're going to look at that giant pool of straddlers and go, woohoo, that's an untouched mushy middle. And I'm here to tell you, it does not matter. Ignore them, let them go. Right? They say sometimes you have to talk to someone 7 times before they start to understand your message. You're not going to get their attention 7 times. You're going to spend a ton of money trying to do it. The problem is we spend all of our time talking to people on either end of the spectrum. We talk to supporters because who doesn't love hanging out with people who love you? Like that's your mom, not your spouse. Your spouse is probably a sympathizer because, again, remember, your spouse is not afraid to call you out when you say something dumb and do it publicly. Your mom may not do that, but your spouse certainly will, right? And splenetics, we spend all of our time because they're dictating the agenda. They're the ones who are standing out in your front yard with a picket sign. They're the ones who are writing letters to the editor. They're the ones who are trying to get the EPA to launch a massive multi-state investigation. We spend all of our attention and our focus on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Now, here's something crazy. What if we took all of our attention, all of our communications, all of our messaging, all of our marketing, all of our direct communication materials, and really drilled into specifically the skeptics? Because skeptics are a pain in the butt. But you know what? They're not wrong. They're probably a little more vocal than you would prefer. But when they ask questions like, hey, if we do this, isn't that just going to give us cancer? That's probably a legitimate question. That's a question that probably deserves an answer. I understand that if you do it this way, it's illegal. They may not be as politely phrased as that.
Right.
But it's a good question, right? You may not like the question, but it's a damn good question. You better have an answer for that, right? So what happens is we spend all of our attention and all of our time answering the skeptics because something crazy happens when you convert a skeptic. A skeptic is hanging out over on this left side of the pie, or on this left side of the giant middle finger. When you convert a skeptic, where do they don't become a straddler. They're already engaged. They're already aware of all the names and the issues and the people and the personalities. They become a sympathizer. They skip up 2 whole categories, right? And trust me, nothing is as good a spokesperson as someone saying, you know what? I had that same question. I was concerned about whether or not that's legal or not. And I looked into it, and here's what I found. Boom. You stand back. You have now activated your own little corporate spokespeople team, right? That is so much more credible, so much more effective than some mouthpiece from your organization trying to profess your innocence. When The straddlers, that giant 90% in the mushy middle, eventually they're going to wake up. Eventually they're going to have questions. Eventually they're going to say, hey, I heard something about a mega jail, whatever the issue is. And they're going to hear from two different people. So number one are going to be splenetics, and the splenetics are loud and angry and visceral, and they're going to be like, it's an alien cult form. It's illegal. They're expropriating the land. They're doing all sorts of land crazy stupid allegations that are angry and emotional. And then they're going to hear from you and your team who are calm, who are rational, who are empathetic. And you're going to answer all of the really awkward and ugly questions in a calm, empathetic way. That's not even close. You are going to win that issue 100 times out of 100. And it doesn't even matter if you're right or not. It's by focusing and ignoring the splenetics, and I'm perfectly okay with saying, hey, you know what? Listen, I will tell you what we have learned. And Sally Jane over at the San Francisco Examiner may not like it, but I'll tell you, according to the EPA, this is absolutely the right move. The reason I say that is because boom, 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 and you're off and running, right? Call them out by name. That's perfectly okay. Don't be afraid of the controversy. Recognize you are the source. You have the ability to calm this down. When we start to realize who it is that we really need to be talking to, it becomes so much cleaner, so much more effective. So I'm a big fan of ignoring your straddlers. Don't worry about the straddlers. It's awkward. It's ugly because there's 90% of the people that you're not talking to. Your public relations team is probably saying, hey, we want to be talking to this 90%. Your marketing team is absolutely saying, we want to put in billboards. We want to buy full page ads in the newspaper. We want to be doing all this stuff. That's how they get paid. That's their whole reason for existing. It's not about that. That works really great if you're trying to promote the newest flavor of peanut butter. If you're trying to show off the newest iPhone or whatever it is that you're doing. But when you're dealing with a high stakes communication issue, it's actually far more effective to ignore 90% of the people and focus exclusively on the 2% that are the skeptics. It's not only much more cost effective, it's so much more effective. So,
okay.
Jargon. Every industry has jargon. Law enforcement is awful. I do a lot of work with major arenas, stadiums, entertainment centers, and venues, and we talk about things like a box office. Well, is a box office just a place where you buy boxes? Active shooter drills from the public safety team. Well, is an active shooter, someone who dresses up in yoga gear to there's a lot of weird terms that are out there. I ran into the leachate is dispersed via a plume distribution in what, so it was a hydrogeology report. Hydrogeology meaning groundwater. And so there's an entire industry out there called hydrogeologists who look at chemicals in the water and where those chemicals go if you spill chemicals on the ground. So remember that I mentioned this trichloroethylene plume in the American Southwest. Part of that is, where is all of these, this chemical going? And the line that was in the report was, the leachate is dispersed via a plume distribution. What that is hydrogeologist speak for saying it's really thick here, and as you get further and further away, it's less and less strong. We tested that with a group of grade 5 and 6 students, and we got, the leeches are growing feathers and flying away.
Shoo. Okay.
Right. And I can see it. You got leeches, you've got leachate, right? You've got plumes. Well, that's obviously a feather. You know, so I used to say, would you say it to your spouse? And I'm going to change this to say, would you say this to your dumb brother-in-law? Because your spouse probably knows your industry a little too well. They probably know all of the weird things that you complain about on a daily basis. You don't want to talk to your spouse, but you do want to say, would I explain this to my dumb brother-in-law this way? And if the answer is probably not, then you need to go back and reassess what it is you're actually doing. Yeah. TMI disease is too much information. Well, if we just here, we're going to give you the full unabridged hydrogeologist's report. Here's the full EPA report. Here is every test result we've ever done as to how to ensure that listeriosis isn't in our, in our packaged meats. You can go on and on and on. Where you see this a lot, by the way, are in the most famous example that everyone I think kind of can relate to is when it's municipal election season and you get the leaflet in your door with here's Bill Forster's 75-point action plan to get rid of crime in Ward 5, right? With like 9-point font, on a 3-fold brochure talking. No one's actually reading that, right? Stop doing that. If you can't boil this down into 12 words or less, you really don't have any business being out in front and being in front of the public. So you need to have that information available 100%. Be open, be transparent, be honest. Here is where you can look up all of the EPA reports. Here is all of the things. Here are our test results. Absolutely, that's perfectly fine. But to rely upon that as a communications message is the wrong idea. It just does not work. Your audience, frankly, doesn't care, right? So now that you've got those 5 or 7 ways that you're going to get yourself in trouble, how do you get yourself out of trouble, right? And I am a huge fan of the power of a well-crafted key message. When you have an issue and you can come up with an answer that answers everything in 7 to 11 words, that boils all of your problems down into one easy, very recognizable, very reproducible solution. They're set apart, they're memorable, they're positive. Why are they positive in nature? Because we don't repeat negatives, right? Okay. So we act fairly to everyone. We're committed to creating a safe environment. Nothing's more important than the safety of our guests. It repeats itself, and I've made reference, I think, in our last webinar to the recipe. What is the recipe? How do you actually do this? And I did promise I'd spend a little bit more time on this. So, and again, just for those who didn't catch that the first time, I barbecue. I'm a great cook. I don't bake, but even I can bake a birthday cake, because you take the box of Duncan Hines and it's got the brown powder in it, and you open it up and you dump it in, and you have to add 1 egg, I don't know, a 1/4 cup of oil and 1 cup of water. Put it in the oven at 350 degrees for 20 minutes, and out comes birthday cake. Now, if you forget the egg and you put it in when it comes out of the oven, well, now you don't have birthday cake. You've got a slimy mess, right? If you get the amount of oil and water reversed, again, you don't have birthday cake. You've got a slimy, oily mess. If you, instead of 350 degrees for 20 minutes, you bake it at 200 degrees for 350 minutes. Again, you don't have birthday cake. You've got carbon, right? There's a recipe, right? You have to follow the recipe, and the recipe, there's this framework that I drill into my clients, empathy, because again, this is really what it's all boiling down to. Nothing is more important than empathy in proving that you can be trusted and credible. We talked the last time about let's take the energy out of the room. Let's get people calm. Let's actually get them to listen to you. You do that with empathy. Then you hit them with your 7 to 11 words. The key message that really is driving your issue, driving your agenda. You back that up with a supporting point. Do it preferably based on facts. Second supporting point based on your own personal experience. And you wrap it up with those same 7 to 11 words. I'm going to show you what this looks like. So, for example, I deal with a lot of water parks, theme parks, amusement facilities, that sort of thing. Every now and then they run into questions regarding water quality. So, the question is the water safe to swim in? If my family comes to your park, am I going to get a rash? You know what? I've asked myself that same question. I can tell that this is an important issue to you. And I can say this: the water in our pools is safe to swim in. We've insisted on a full audit from the Public Health Authority. They've given our park an A+ grade in water maintenance issues. In fact, I bring my own family here to swim in these pools, which is why I can say the water in our pools is safe to swim in. Right? At the end of the day, they may not like the answer, but they can't really argue with and you can see the structure. We're opening in that white line. Empathy. I've asked myself that same question. I can tell that this is an important issue. What I'm not saying is, well, you're right to be concerned about our toxic water. 7 to 11 words. The water in our pools is safe to swim in. 10 words. That's it. 10 words. Anything longer than that becomes harder to repeat. Anything shorter than that comes off as too trite. Scientifically tested. 7 to 11 words. Supporting point based on facts. Supporting point based on personal experience. Wrap it up verbatim. Repeat the same statement. The water in our pools is safe to swim in. Doesn't matter if I heard cousin Jimmy came here and he got a rash, or I hear that you don't change the filters on the swimming pools unless it's every 3 months, or I hear that the water turns green at night. It doesn't matter what the allegation is. You've answered the question pretty much exactly the same way.
Right.
Water in our pools is safe to swim in. Here's why I can tell you. Right.
Yeah.
That's the recipe. The recipe is there. The recipe is your friend. The water in our pools is safe to swim in. That recipe is going to keep you out of trouble. That recipe is going to not touch it. So with that in mind, if you are watching this and you are a CEO, if you are a business leader, we've spent some time in our first session talking about crisis communications in general, the issues, how they're not fact-based, they're emotion-based, how they're really the Monday morning problems, all of these sorts of things. The issue I run into all the time is people say, oh, we have a crisis communications plan. The typical thinking, the standard thinking about how we as a culture, how we as a business society handle high stakes communications is broken. I have a mission to fix the broken solutions. I have seen more companies get themselves in trouble because they have a crisis communications plan, because it gives them a false sense of security. It sits on some mid-level manager's desk somewhere. It becomes a crutch. It's dangerous. There are so many more effective tools, better ways of handling, better ways of preparing for a crisis than what typical corporate culture allows. I would ask you to ask these questions. Go to your team and say, hey, look, in the event of a crisis, where do we all meet and who's invited into the room? If they can't tell you the primary and the backup meeting location, by the way, the backup meeting location had better not be on site, because it's not going to do you any good if one of the crises is that our building is on fire. Secondly, the people who are in the room need to know that they are in the room and that they should be in the room. The people who are not invited into the room should know that they are not invited into the room. Where you will get into trouble is when those people don't understand, either people that you do need there or people that you don't want there that think that they're so important that they should be there. This needs to be communicated. You need to have those protocols in advance. That's not a crisis communications plan. That is a crisis protocol that you need to have in place. Second protocol, who's your spokesperson? Who is the backup to the spokesperson? One is none, two is one. Who are your spokespeople? Secondly, are they trained? Not on media training. Media training is vanilla. Media training is the newest flavor of peanut butter. It's the newest iPhone. It's the newest. Let's talk about our new corporate sustainability initiatives. No, I want to know, are our corporate spokespeople actually trained on crisis-specific communications? Do they understand key message development? Do they understand the role of empathy, how that works, the different ways to build, and what we've just shown, the different ways to destroy good, common sense, empathy building communication solutions? What approval hurdles do we have before we allow our people to communicate? It does you no good if you have a crisis trained spokesperson who isn't allowed to speak. Do not do that to yourself. You have to have a team. There is no substitute for speed. Give your people an opportunity to succeed. And finally, what external resources do we have that can help? I'm speaking personally. We have a program called Crisis Tether. It allows us to be in the boardroom and to step right there with you. There are other organizations that are out there. This is not a pitch. This is, understand that you're not alone in this, but you need to have those resources activated, tagged, and ready to go. And if you want to have a conversation about what that looks like, happy to do that. This is not the time and place for that. But don't just assume that you're in this on your own. That is a really, really toxic and a really bad way of going about doing that. Bill, I try very hard to honor a timeline. I think you told me 45 to 50 minutes, and if I understand properly, I'm looking at 48.
You're right on target, sir. And I guess that's part of the 7 to 11 word principle as well. Be on time is be early, and don't go longer than you said you would go short, right? So anyway, for those of you that would like to get a hold of Jeff, he said this is not a pitch, but let's be real. He does this out of the kindness of his heart, and his wife doesn't care if he ever makes any money. Oh, no.
Wait, yeah.
That's not quite right, is it? So Jeff's telephone number is 519-513-1050.
1053.
Oh my goodness, 1053. You know, I read it and didn't say it. Thank you very much. His email is Chatterton, which his name was on the screen there, last name, at checkmatepublicaffairs.com. And any other way you would love people to reach out to you? Maybe LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you're looking at, I'm sharing right there a couple QR codes. One is my contact info. You can scan that with your phone. It'll bring up my phone and my email. The other one is my LinkedIn profile. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat. I am always happy to have a super informal conversation with people. I really, really suck at selling. I'm not here to sell. I am here to learn more about you. So.
Fair enough. All right. Well, Jeff, it's been my pleasure to learn again from you this month. And I think we are scheduled for, I want to say we skipped November and we're doing something in December, or we skip November, or we're doing November.
I wish I could tell you off the top of my head, but I'm sure you and I will talk offline and we'll figure it out.
I'm positive you and I have it, and Alexandria will beat us both into the right place at the right time. So thank you. Oh, we have new comment. Let me see here. December 11th. See, she's on top.
Oh, there we go.
December 11th. There we go. So we'll live stream. This will be posted to YouTube, and you'll be able to watch it as a replay. And we want to make darn sure that you know that Jeff is an expert, and we're honored to have him here at CEO Zones, our online exclusive community for CEOs with 1 billion or more in annual revenue. He is a content partner. And one of the reasons Jeff is a content partner, it just strikes me that many times in my career, I wished I would have known Jeff. And I did a couple of things where I might wing where we had a chemical leak. I might have kind of made up my own message, thought what was right to the local community, and I wished I would not have done that. And therefore, we always reach out for content partners that can add value. So thank you so much, Jeff, and we'll see you again on December 11th.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.